Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm Caroline Sprinkle, this is Column 110, and I'm doing this speech. So, Shakespeare. Hearing the name in an English class either fills hearts with dreads or makes one's day better. Whether you love or hate Shakespeare, there are many film adaptations of his many plays that can sometimes be better or easier to understand than the actual plays. So many film versions of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet exist, some that are blatant interpretations of his work, like the classic Romeo and Juliet made in the 60s, ones that are subtly based on the play, like West Side Story, and others that have a unique take on the play, like the more recent Romeo and Juliet made in the 90s. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the classic Romeo and Juliet in the 60s. The first film adaptation of the play and the most popular one at the time. According to Roger Ebert, a very famous film critic, on his website, published in 1968, it really stuck to the original play. And according to an article by Linda Zuri, and also published on the Turner Classic Movie website, it was the first out of over 30 adaptations of the play, which was accessed in 2015. And it's very similar to the play, like I said. It still has the star-crossed lovers and still set in Verona, and it follows the plot in the ends of the double suicide of Romeo and Juliet. The movie received many awards. It received the Best Cinematography and Costume Design and the Academy Awards, and it was also very popular with teenagers, just because the actors were very close to the age of those who had been seeing the movie. And so it was a very popular film and still is considered like the classic, very basic film version of Romeo and Juliet. So unlike the classic version, West Side Story, the musical, is more a subtle interpretation of Romeo and Juliet. West Side Story was inspired by the play and was also popular in the awards and in the public, like Romeo and Juliet, the movie. And so there are a few differences though. It was set in America instead of Italy like the play. There was also a feud between gangs instead of families, and it was gangs of different ethnicities. And the movie also didn't end in a double suicide like the play. Maria, who is kind of the version of Juliet, decided not to commit suicide after Tony died in the movie. And so it won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and it won 10 out of the 11 ones it was nominated for. So it was very popular in award season. And according to Roger Ebert, who did his critique in 2004, to him it wasn't as popular later on. Personally, he remembered musical movies like Singing in the Rain more than West Side Story. But in Will Hoyt's blog post in 2012, she believes that the socio-political message of the movie really has lasted. The message of overcoming racial and class boundaries in America has really lasted in that generation that saw the movie as well as later on. And so the last version I'm going to talk about, that's a lot different from the musical just because it has singing and dancing, is the really more recent version with Leonardo DiCaprio made in the 90s. It's a very unique take on the play. It had a really different modern setting. It was set in a fictional place, Verona Beach in America, and it had really modern gangs with guns instead of just poison like a lot of the deaths occur by. But it did actually stick to Shakespeare's really formal language and iambic meter, according to the Rolling Stones article by Travers in 1996. And so it did end in the double suicide as well. So it created a really interesting contrast between the really formal language of Shakespeare and a really modern setting. And so because of this modernity of the movie version, it was really popular amongst the youth that grew up with it, and it was really just good to watch just because they understood it more than the play, because it had Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, who are really attractive modern actors. So they really connected to the movie more, according to Ebert's critique in 1996. And so it really also started off the celebrity career of Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. It really helped them start off their movie career. And so based on these three movies, along with other movie versions of Romeo and Juliet, you can really see that Shakespeare's had a lasting influence, because after so many centuries, film adaptations are still being made. And so based on these different takes, you can have many different options of understanding Romeo and Juliet, whether you want a more direct version, musical version, or a really unique take. And so based on all these plays, or all these movies, you can really see that Shakespeare is one of the most famous playwrights in history. Thank you.